it for Matt and Sherry Devine today, who are leading us in music. What a great way to start. Good morning and welcome to Newburgh United Methodist Church on this cold and rainy day. And I really mean that. You know, some of these kinds of days are some of my favorites. I know it's dark when you get up in the morning and you're looking outside and you say, I think I'll roll back over. But I'm glad you're here. And what a wonderful opportunity for us to bring some light into our lives today. So thank you for taking time out for worship. And I call your attention this morning to our Connect card, which you'll find in your bulletin if you picked one up. If not, they're in the back on the table. We invite you to share some information about yourself. It's our way of saying thank you for taking time out for worship and that we do not take you for granted, and we really mean that. So we invite you to fill out the information on this card, and you can drop it in during the offering time or give it to one of the ushers. You can always drop it on my desk in my office if you'd like. On the other side are two pieces of information. The first one is an invitation to an event that's happening October 28th. You can read all about it. But always know when we publicize events, you have the choice to just come and be, to experience the event. You have the choice to come and serve. You have the choice to come and serve part of the time and be part of the time. But by all means, we invite you to be available and just take part as you feel led. Fill out the card. At the bottom is an area that's so important to us every single week and day, for that matter. It's an area for prayer. What's on your heart? What's on your mind this morning? Who are you thinking about today? We invite you to place it on the card so that we might pray for you and with you, at least spiritually. If it's confidential, we ask you to mark it that way on the card, and it is only routed to the pastoral staff. We take that very seriously. And again, I want to thank you for trusting us with the number of prayer requests that you give to us every single week. Certainly on our minds is the recent hurricane that hit Panama full force. Please know that the United Methodist Committee on the Relief is already there. They've acquired a 35,000 square foot warehouse where they're collecting supplies. Next Sunday, and for the next few Sundays, you will see envelopes on your table, as well as in the sanctuary, in the pews, as a way to support the relief effort. 100% of what you give will go to make a difference. Lots of things taking place, lots of invitations for you. But I invite you now, as you're able, would you stand up and greet one another this morning?
Please shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I'd like to welcome the children to come and join me. Come on. Oh man, I'm scary today. You guys are really far away. I showered this morning, I promise. Hi, good morning. Well, good morning. How are you guys today? You're good? I'm so glad. I have a question. How many of you are really strong? Oh, I'm seeing some muscles. They're showing me. You guys can't see them. They're showing me. We got some strong friends up here. Have any of you ever not felt very strong? Yeah. Sometimes. So, can I tell you a story real quick? One time. So sometimes they think that, and they're wrong, by the way, but sometimes people think that girls aren't very strong. And even as an adult, sometimes people think I'm not very strong. And one time I was helping at church, and this guy said, I'll take that, you don't have to carry it. And it was a 50-pound bag of rice. Now, what he didn't know is that in high school I used to lift weights, and I always worked outside with my dad, and so being a girl was never an excuse to not be strong. And so, you know what I did? I took one 50-pound bag of rice and put it on this shoulder. And I took another 50-pound bag of rice and I put it on this shoulder. And you know what that man did? His eyes kind of got really big and he goes, oh, I guess you are strong. And it was kind of weird for me because I always knew I was strong, but somebody else thought that I was kind of weak. And there are all kinds of things in this world like that. Sometimes we feel weak. Maybe sometimes the world makes us feel weak if we cry. You know, that makes Pastor Suzanne's heart hurt. Because it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. Those things are all okay. Sometimes people make us feel weak if we can't lift something heavy, like I just told you about. Sometimes we might feel weak if we can't get that math problem right, or we're having a really hard time writing our name or holding our pencils right. But that doesn't make us weak. Did the monkey bars all the way across? Way to go! Woo! Woo woo! So here's the thing. Sometimes you're gonna feel weak. Some of my older friends here, they told me, and sometimes they feel weak. And you know what's really cool about our Jesus and our God? They make us strong. And it doesn't mean like they give us bigger muscles strong. That's not what it means. It just means that God makes us brave to try the things that are really hard. And sometimes God does make us able to do those things. And then you know what? People are like, Pastor Suzanne wasn't that strong. How did she do that? And then you know what I get to say? God did it. And then everybody around gets to learn how awesome our God is and how awesome our Jesus is. Isn't that pretty cool? So sometimes being weak isn't a bad thing at all. It's just a great way for God to show up and show everybody else how strong He is. Isn't that pretty cool? You have something you want to tell me this morning?
I walked over a big bridge.
You walked over a big bridge? That could be really scary. High five. Good job. Will you guys pray with me? Dear God, thank you for loving me
Thank you for loving me.
and making me so special. Thank you for reminding me
Thank you for reminding me
that even when I feel weak,
that
you are strong.
you are strong.
And the reason? So everybody else can know how awesome you are. Amen. All right, let's go to Sunday school.
Thank you, Pastor Suzanne. I'm learning a new mantra from Suzanne, and that is all week long I say, I'm so special. So special. For the last 2 weeks, and we'll continue this the next 2 weeks, we have a time of testimony to God's goodness. This morning's guest was to be Jennifer and Wade Foote. So I want to share with you, with their permission, the text that I received this morning as a way to remind us of some really cool things in a shortened version of this today. It's from Jennifer, and it's in, like I said, with her permission. She said, "Good morning. Sorry to bother you. This is Jennifer Foote. I've got a sick kiddo. DJ's not feeling well. He's running a fever, coughing, and has the sniffles. I will not be able to make it today. If Wade," and that's her husband, who we weren't expecting because he's on a trip. "If Wade was back in time, I would have had him stay home with little buddy. I do apologize and hope this will not affect our becoming members in the future. I do apologize. And I hope this will not affect our becoming members in the future." Jennifer and Wade and their family are very new to us. And that's why I asked them if they'd be willing to share. And I'm not going to share their testimony, but I shared that last line emphatically to remind us of the perception that folks continue to have of a community of faith. And it is of an earned experience or of quick rejection when one thing doesn't go the way it's planned. So when I read that text, I wrote back immediately and said, "Oh, of course not. Feel better." Because we can't earn God's love, as you heard in the powerful song, Reckless Love. That's why that song is so powerful. And I want Jennifer and Wade and all the Jennifer and Wades of the world to understand that when you come into a faith community, it's not passing through a number of hoops to please the church. If it is, I'd suggest you find a new faith community. It's about being baptized into the fellowship of all believers and allowing God to love you and to receive God. And that's it. So it was a poignant moment for me today. And this testimony of God's goodness is one way to talk about stewardship. And she was an incredible steward this morning. You say, "Well, how is she a steward? She didn't give you money this morning." Nope. "Well, how is she a steward? She was supposed to be here, so she didn't come in this morning." That's correct. But she took time and kindness in the midst of her sick children to text me to let me know she was not going to be here. And then she apologized when she didn't need to, and apologized and hoped it would not jeopardize her relationship with the church. Stewardship, as I've said before, is about so much more than just financial giving. That's a piece of it, and we all know that. We should all know that. But there's so much more. And for those that are listening at home this morning, again, I welcome you. And And I'm reminded of those watching live stream as I get text in between the services, and for those that are participating with us. But I want to remind each and every one of you that this worship series is not designed to be a gimmick to get us to do something different than what we should be doing every single day and every week. This worship series is designed to remind us of the incarnational reality of Jesus Christ becoming flesh. And it's also designed to give us a new way to get into the gospel and the gospel stories. And I want to make sure that we all understand that. So I'm thankful today that Jennifer allowed me to share her text. Thankful that she is finding her way in this faith community. They've only been here about 5 weeks. They're brand spanking new. And I want to give you a compliment that you'll probably say, well, I don't deserve that, or I didn't do anything. You did. Jennifer's very first Sunday, she came up and she said, I love it here. She introduced herself. We're going to stay here. I'm going to bring back my husband. I'm going to bring back my family. I said, okay. And she did. And that's because when she walked in the room, and she happens to attend this particular service, she discovered something she hadn't discovered for a very long time. People that care and love and accept, invite, and a God who loves her for who she is. So I want to thank you for that. And remind you that that is a great part of our stewardship. Being willing to relate to all others with acceptance, care, and love. And that's just pretty cool. So thank you for that. As we prepare for the offering this morning, we invite you to use the buckets at your table for your prayer cards and any other tangible gifts that you would like to bring forward and pour into the bigger buckets. Now, I would only ask that if there's still circus peanuts in your bucket, either you eat them or give them to me. I still love them. They are the incredible candy that never dies, because if it gets stale, you sit on the dash of your car in the sun and eat it nice and warm later. I would also tell you that tomorrow night is this event called the United Methodist Women's Basket Auction. We may think that's just one more program in the church, but it's a very powerful ministry that allows them to raise thousands of dollars for children, for people in need, to reach out to the incarcerated, to reach out to the homeless, to reach out to the orphan, the widowed, and the hurting. I have the pleasure of being the auctioneer tomorrow, so I'm just still excited about it. I can't wait. But I just invite you to come. And even if you don't bid on anything, please come. Because if you twitch, I'm going to say that you did. So at this time, we invite you to participate as you feel so led to bring your offering forward as the first fruits of what we offer to God.
I'm leaning in.
on the lectern, on the music stand over the back. No, keep going over. You can use that. Is that a light?
I found it.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. You got it.
There we go. By show of hands or applause, who has not yet turned on the heat? Okay, all right. Bravo to you souls. I was good last night under the down comforter, but when I woke up and saw the breath, I decided it was time to turn on the heat. It was a dark day. As we dig into week 3 of the Greatest Show worship series, we begin with this question: when is it ever enough? In other words, when is it ever enough success, enough time with friends, enough money for life, enough money for ministry, enough tries to fit in at school or work or at home? We live in a culture that has an abundance of food, clean water, places to live, and on, yet ironically, it appears that no matter how much is accumulated, it is never enough. This morning, the Apostle Paul reminds us that only Jesus brings true fulfillment, and that God's grace is enough for us all. Romans 8, verses 18 through 27. I believe that the present suffering is nothing compared to the coming glory that is going to be revealed to us. The whole creation waits breathless with anticipation for the revelation of God's sons and daughters. Creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice. It was the choice of the one who subjected it, but in the hope that the creation itself will be set free from slavery to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of God's children. We know that the whole creation is groaning together in suffering, labor pains, up until now. And it's not only the creation, we ourselves, who have the Spirit as the first crop of the harvest, also groan inside, as we wait to be adopted and for our bodies to be set free. We were saved in hope. If we see what we hope for, that isn't hope. Who hopes for what they can already see? But if we hope for what we don't see, we wait for it with patience. In the same way, the Spirit comes to help our weakness. We don't know what we should pray, but the Spirit himself pleads our case with unexpressed groans. The one who searches hearts knows how the Spirit thinks, because he pleads for the saints consistent with God's will. Our second reading is from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. He said to me, "My grace is enough for you, because power is made perfect in weakness. So I'll gladly spend my time bragging about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power can rest on me." May we be strong in our weakness through the hearing of God's word. Amen.
I'm trying to hold my breath, let it stay this way, can't let this moment end. You set off a dream in me, getting louder now, can you hear it echoing? Take my hand, will you share this with me? 'Cause darling, without you, all the shine of thousand spotlights, all the stars we steal from the night sky will never be enough, never be enough. Towers of gold
both these services and looking forward to next service. And let's just pause and drink that in, huh? Pause and drink that in. As we start this morning, I would like to begin with a video clip, and I want to set it up for you. It's on the movie called Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise. So all of you that are crushing on Tom Cruise, get ready. And in this movie, Tom Cruise is a sports agent wannabe. And he's looking for enough, so to speak. And he's hoping to score that big athlete, that he can finally get the big commission on and be famous. And he leaves the company he's with, and one other girl walks out with him, and she's crazy about him. And through the course of events of him searching for what he thinks is that gold ring, he discovers that he's blown it. And he blows it all. And he blows the relationship. We're going to pick up this 58-second clip when Jerry has finally discovered he's blown it. And he's hoping without hope that there's still love left. And so the scene begins with him coming into the house where a group of women, including the girl that he now realizes is his enough, is with other women who are complaining about their broken relationships in their lives. And he walks in hoping that what he says will be, well, enough. Please watch.
Cynical world. And we work in a business of tough competitors. I love you. You complete me. And I'm just as
Just shut up. You had me at hello. You had me at hello.
This is the best talking group I've ever.
The room changed a bit, didn't it, huh? We're still in this worship series, The Greatest Show, dealing with the greatest show, which is the incarnation of God through Jesus Christ, becoming flesh among us. That is the greatest show. And today we're dealing with never enough. What does that mean? Yesterday I did a wedding, and during the celebration, just a wonderful wedding, but there was this moment that the groom was very nervous. I love it when grooms are nervous for the right reasons. And he was afraid he was going to cry. And we got to the vows. And as he started saying those words, I love you, and for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, the tears started to come. He's trying to hold together. I said, you're doing fine. He tried to hold it together. And the bride, who was scared to death, she was going to lose it, was real strong during that moment. So after the service was over, I was with him by myself, and I said, I got to tell you something. I know you're worried about crying, but I got to be honest with you. There's not a woman in the world, or man if it was reversed, there's not a woman in the world that doesn't feel the love when the man she loves is willing to cry for her because he loves her that much. And I said, thank you for that this morning. But we have to go to a question. What is being complete really mean? What does being complete really mean? And when we liken it to a puzzle. I like to do puzzles. I haven't really started since we moved here, but I like to set up a table and do puzzles. Now, I'm not your puzzle person that does like the real teeny tiny ones you need a microscope and a special light for. The 1,000-piece suckers, forget those. I'm a 300 big piece guy. Sometimes I jump up to the 500 pieces if it's a picture I'm really excited about. But I use it because it relaxes me. I find that as I'm doing the puzzle, and even if the TV's on or something, I'm just relaxing until you lose that one daggone piece. You know? And it usually matches the carpet. No matter what kind of carpet, the piece you lose always matches the carpet. Or the floor. And so you're doing all kinds of things to find the piece. You want to find that one piece. You have all 499 other pieces, but you want that one piece. And so you make sure the dog didn't eat it. So you're checking the dog poop every day to make sure that puzzle piece is not there. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't really do that. But the bottom line is you're looking. That's what Luke 15 is all about. Luke 15 talks about the lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son. And in all three of those parables, there are other sheep, there are other coins, and there's other family members. But they're searching for the one that completes the puzzle. So there's something about being complete that causes us to feel that we finally have all the pieces that we need to experience fulfillment. But unfortunately, we've begun looking in areas where it just doesn't work. And one of those is accumulation of stuff. And we've gotten so good at accumulation of stuff, they've created a reality show called Storage Wars. And if you haven't seen it, Storage Wars is about a group of men and women who earn their money by going to storage units all across the country where the people that had put their stuff in the unit have long since gone. And the law allows, after a certain amount of time to pass, they can cut the lock off, open it up, and give it to the highest bidder. So these people gathered around the storage units are literally bidding on stuff inside. They don't know what it is. And the show is about this moment when they find that, oh, there really is nothing there. They just paid $1,000 for it. Or they found something really valuable. But the bottom line is they're just bidding on stuff. Is the fulfillment in the fact that they're bidding and they're winning against their competitors? Is it the continual quest for that treasure, that pearl they hope to find? I'm not sure, but it's all about stuff. Not a good place to look for fulfillment. Another unhealthy reality is hoarding. We may think that hoarding is something new, but it actually dates back to at least Exodus chapter 16, verse 20. Moses has just freed all of the people from Egypt rather. The Israelites are out of Egypt, and they're out in the desert. They're making their way, and they're starting to complain. They're complaining because they're hungry, they're thirsty, and they don't have all the comforts they had as slaves. Imagine that. Think about that for a moment. They felt they had more comfort and security as slaves than they did as free people. So Moses says, no problem, God has this. God is going to send quail. God is going to send manna. And you're going to be fed to the full. But here's the one caveat. When you gather your manna, just gather enough to sustain your family for that day. Don't gather any extra. Don't hoard it, okay? Don't gather any extra. Just gather what you need. And so they started to gather, but there were plenty of folks that thought, oh my gosh, what if we run out? And I want to make sure my family has more. I don't want to go hungry. And so they hoarded it. And they gathered more manna than they needed. So the next morning when they got up for breakfast, their manna was covered in maggots. It's because they had gathered too much. And when we gather too much, it can become infested and infected. And infested with larvae and all those things that disgust us. And it becomes something we can no longer use. And it's because they didn't have faith and trust in Moses and even in God, even more importantly. That God really would provide. So they began to gather stuff, and in this case, manna. And it worked against them. Guaranteed the next day they didn't take so much. But did that lesson last long enough? And as you read the rest of the Bible, you find out, no, it did not. So here's another question I pose for all of us today. When are we going to learn to say the word when? We have the luxury, if you will, to go out to eat often. Many of us, whether it be fast food or someplace else, and if it's someplace where there's a waiter or waitress, they will come to our table and they'll get ready to pour the coffee. In my case, I love coffee, or whatever they're going to pour, and they'll say, "Tell me when." And if you don't tell them when, then your cup spills over. And it not only spills over, it goes in your lap. It looks like you just wet your pants. It's a great moment, let me tell you. And the coffee's hot. And it hurts. And you can get scalded. All because we don't take time to say when. It's the same thing when you have an open buffet, all you can eat. Dangerous places to be. Because there are those folks that are certain that if they don't get it all on the first pass, that when they come back, they're going to run out of meatballs or pasta or something. And so they're going to gather it all on that first pass. And they're going to make sure they have it. They don't know when to say when. We don't know when to say when. But Scripture is telling us, and we're going to reveal that as we look at this passage today, that there is a time to say when. So let's put the passage in context this morning. Let's talk about biblical suffering. Now, suffering is suffering. Let's just leave it at that for a moment. But I want to put this in the context of Paul's words, because his words become more profound when we realize the environment in which he was writing these words. So we need to remember that Paul himself had suffered greatly. Once he became a follower of Christ, it did not diminish his suffering, it increased it 100-fold. And so Paul had been through his own physical suffering, but just people in general in biblical times. People that were fortunate enough to be a part of a village where everybody shared everything, that was great. Many people did not. And if you were orphaned, widowed, or had some type of debilitating physical or mental experience, you were on your own, and your life was that of a beggar. So outside of the normal suffering that came with having to work for your food every single day and get it out of the land or raise enough money to get it, there was an added suffering. And the added suffering were for those that said, I follow Jesus. And so they did these awful things to people that said they were followers of Jesus. They put them in arenas and fed them. Now think about this. Fed them to wild animals. If you've ever seen, whether it be on TV or ever seen a wild animal go after prey, if you've ever seen maybe your own pets, dogs, when they're really hungry and you put it down in front of them, they eat a piece of raw meat a lot different than they eat dog food. And they would take the Christians and lather them up with a good scent and throw them into the arena to be eaten alive as the crowd cheered. That's why I refer to this as biblical suffering. But there's suffering in our world today and in our culture too of a global scale when people say stuff on Facebook that aren't true and post it and send it to friends and group text and it hurts at the core. So whether it's emotional, spiritual, sexual, physical suffering or abuse, what does Paul say about that? He uses three things together. He uses suffering, glory, and then I add high expectations. And verse 18 of this passage, he gives the most, I think, profound statement. He says, I do not believe that we can compare the sufferings of our current situation, current life. I don't believe we can compare these sufferings to the glory that we are about to receive through Jesus Christ who loves us. So he's saying, I know it's bad, folks. Remember his audience. These are suffering, oppressed people. I know it's bad, he says, but I want you to understand it's going to be incredible and in a way that we cannot fathom. God's glory is so incredible and unfathomable that we just can't put it into words. And so let us not focus on our suffering, but focus on that which is to come. Let's pause. If you've ever been with someone who is really suffering miserably, from an emotional experience, from a physical experience, maybe actively done. And maybe you didn't volunteer for the job, but you find out you're the person there at the bedside or with them after the dance is over or sitting with them when the game is lost, and you're the person there to comfort them. And these words come back saying, gosh, we just can't compare the suffering. Ways that we verbalize that is that, you know what, I know it seems really bad right now. But this isn't the end. What a great thing to say to someone. I know it seems really bad right now, but it's not the end. It will get better. I got an anonymous text, which you're welcome to do. If you're not in my phone, then when you send me something, you're anonymous. I got an anonymous text a couple of weeks ago. I do not know from whom. It may not even be this church. It could be someone through my life. I really don't even know the age or gender, but it simply said this. I got it late at night. It said, Pastor Craig, have you ever done something that you're so ashamed of? Because I've done something and it's hurt a relationship that I am in. and I don't know what to do. So the person at the other end of that text is suffering. They're hurting. And so instead of some big theological experience or quoting the scripture, I just simply said, sure, I've done that. And you're not alone. Things will get better. Have hope. And I'm just a text away. Now, I'm not saying that solved all of this person's problems, because the only response I got was, thanks for your response. And I just continue to pray, but I don't know what the situation is. So Paul is profound in the sense that he's saying to us, it will get better, no matter how bad the suffering. But we live in a world of a need of instant gratification. We want it, and we want it now. That was the whole idea behind fast food restaurants, right? And when do we get frustrated? When the fast food's not fast. And you can't have fast food coming fast when you're 12th in line in the drive-thru. It's not going to happen quickly. They don't even have your order yet. It's like we expect them to read our minds. I do. Hey, I'm in line. I want a cheeseburger, for heaven's sake. Figure it out. And then bring it out to my car before I get up there. A matter of fact, we are becoming a culture that is so prone to instant gratification. Have you noticed places like Chick-fil-A, among others, have people outside now? So you don't have to wait till you get to the speaker. They have human beings that walk up to your car and say, let me go ahead and take your order and get that in for you. What they're doing is they're calming our anxiety of our hunger. Like they're going to run out of chicken. It's never happened. Don't know where they get them. They've never run out. I've never gone up to a McDonald's and said, I'd like a cheeseburger. Don't do that anymore. We don't have them. We're out. We got to close early. But we want that. And we want that in regards to our suffering. There's a lot of medications today that can take away suffering quickly, momentarily. That's what morphine does. When you got the heavy pain, that you shoot the morphine. But it only lasts momentarily. You have to take another medication to keep it going. But we want it right now, because we think if it goes away right now, then it's gone forever. And that's not the truth. And Paul wants us to understand that there is suffering. And I understand the suffering. But we just really can't compare it to what is coming, which is so much better. So hang in there. You are not alone. So let's talk about weakness. The strength in weakness. The strength and weakness is quite powerful, because when we feel the weakest, we don't feel strong about ourselves. We feel vulnerable. We don't like to. We want to be able to lift up that 50-pound bag like Suzanne was talking about. Throw on each shoulder. We want to do that with our emotions. We want to do that with everything. One of us say, we can do this. I can handle this. And yet it's very clear that the real strength in our weakness is total reliance on God. Now think about it, folks, if we're honest. When do we turn to God the most deeply? It's when we are the weakest, in the most suffering, or the most hurting experience of our life. That's not bad. It's still good that you do. If we can balance out sharing with God the great moments of thanksgiving and the joys as well as in the sorrows, then we start to balance out and become more mature in our faith experience. But there is great strength and weakness. And that is why Paul says this next profound statement found in Corinthians. Grace is enough. Grace is enough. Grace is a free gift of God. You can use acronyms for it. God's riches at Christ's expense is another great acronym for grace. We receive all the riches of God, all the love, all that unconditional love, and everything from God because Christ died for us. That's what that acronym means. God's riches at Christ's expense. But Paul says grace is enough. Throughout his ministry, Paul complained about a thorn in his side. We don't know if it was physical. We don't know if it was mental, like depression. We don't know if it was the physical suffering he experienced when he was whipped, when he was stoned, when he went through all those rough moments of physical pain. But it was with him all the time. He couldn't get rid of it. And he finally came to a conclusion of thankfulness and remembering Jesus when he said, my grace is enough for you. Why? Because, you ready for this? My power is made perfect in weakness. My power is made perfect in weakness. You see, that is why in the NFL, when they have these trick plays, they work. It's because they take the little guy and they put him in the backfield, and the defense is ready to eat that guy up. And they think they know the play, right? They're going to get him. And so they all get up on the one side, and they're ready to take out the weak link. And so they all come barreling through, and they go to jump and prey on that player, and he's not even got the ball. And the other guy's got the ball, and he gets a touchdown, and they get a penalty for killing the little guy. And I'm going, yeah! You see, that's the bottom line. There is strength and our weakness. We have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Jessica's song, Never Enough, and the video of Jerry Maguire reminds us that on our continuing quest and search for enough, the bucket list that we either write down or have in our heads, the things we want to do before we die, the things we want to do before we retire, the things we want to do, all those kinds of lists, we're reminded none of those are enough. Enough only happens when Holy Spirit fills us. Let me say that again. Enough only happens when Holy Spirit fills us. It is this relationship with God that brings total fulfillment. And I know it sounds like a cliche, or that I'm just loading it up because I'm the pastor, and so I always have to end, the answer is always Jesus. Well, it is. That's why when you come to children's moments and the question is asked, you say Jesus, 50% to 80% of the time you're going to get it right. And that's the same in life too. Enough only happens when Holy Spirit fills us. So here's what I'd say. Open up and say, ah. Just as when we go to the doctor and they want to check our throat, they stick that, they don't do it so much anymore, but it used to be that stick, that make you gag, right? Because he wants to see way down in your throat. God wants to see way down in our hearts. And so my invitation is for you to open up and say, ah, welcome, welcome Spirit, welcome Jesus through your Spirit into our lives. And that's what gives us fulfillment. Now please understand, that doesn't mean all the suffering's gone away. That doesn't mean everything's rosy. But it means that we at least are honed in on where true fulfillment comes from. And it's not from stuff. It's from relationship with God first and with others. So I invite you to open up and let the Spirit of God come into you. As the band comes back up, Matt and Sherry this morning, to lead us in the song, may this be an important time for you in prayer and relationship with God. You can light candles at our candle lighting stations as a way to lift up a prayer to God or a memory or honor someone. You can stay right at your tables. One of the really cool things that's happening at your tables, not every week, but I've realized, and I do, I take time every week now to come in and look at the sheets on your tables. At first it was just lots of pictures, which is great. That's what we put it there for, to doodle. Some of you are leaving me prayer requests on your papers on your table. And I want to thank you for that, and I want you to know that I read them and I honor them. And you don't have to do that. I'm just saying it's amazing to see what's taking place, your comfort level, to be able to allow your weakness to be perfected in the power of God as you give us that experience. So as they sing for us now, I invite you to a time of prayer. May you honor God as God loves you.
I was lost, but he brought me. Oh, his love
And as children of God, the real work begins as we leave this place. And so I invite you, as you prepare to leave this place, to go with the knowledge there is a God who loves you unconditionally, who gave his Son, the incarnated one, who became flesh, Jesus, to die for us voluntarily, and Holy Spirit, who is enough. Enough for us all. Go in peace. Have a great week.